Welcome to the Money Maven Project podcast. If you're here to learn how to obtain freedom over your time and money through real estate investing, you're in the right place. Create the life you want by living with intention and becoming a Maven in mindset, money, and real estate. Now, here's your host, Justin Monk.
Hey, this is Justin Monk with the Money Maven Project podcast. I am super excited today. We finally have a guest on that I've been wanting to get on here for quite a while. April Crossley, welcome. Thank you so much for being on today.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah. It's fascinating. I want to hear your story kind of from the beginning, showing the full, kind of the full circle of where you've come from. So maybe give us an introduction to where you came from and where you're at today.
Sure. So I'll give you the short version. I like to let people know just kind of like my background from when, not necessarily when I was younger, but if people have heard me speak before, I had my son very young when I was 16. So I've overcome a lot of hurdles and challenges, was raised in a household where people were anti-wealthy, no money mindset, thought rich people were evil. So I basically went from being a teenage mom on welfare to being a millionaire that travels around the United States in her RV. And there was a lot in between. So my background is in healthcare. And I retired from healthcare when I was 35 because of real estate. I picked up a book, started reading, and inadvertently I was in school for my master's degree to be the CEO of a hospital. Started learning about real estate and was like, well, I'm dropping out of this master's program because real estate stuff sounds pretty good.
I love that.
And just started learning more and more about real estate and actually first created a flipping company. So it was like flipping houses replaced my income. Healthcare started to go downhill and become more of a business. So I started losing my passion for healthcare and was getting really burnt out. I was in it for 13 years. So after flipping houses successfully for 3 years in a row, I was actually making more than I was making in healthcare, working for myself, flipping 3 houses a year. That's all it took to replace my income. So I got out of healthcare and everyone told me I was crazy because you have to sit for your boards and get your license. And it's like, if you give that up, you can't just go back. It's not like, hey, I want my job back. You'd have to go through school, sit for your boards. So I was kind of like, this is a direction I'm going and I don't want a safety net. So I didn't renew my license. I gave up my license so I could never go back to practice again. And kind of just started in real estate and have been growing in that ever since.
That is so awesome. I appreciate that. I want to unpack that just a little bit. So what gave you the bravery, I guess, to take that leap into real estate full time? So let's start there. Then I got another question.
I think a lot of it was I did it slowly. So I started flipping houses on the side and I knew that I wanted to be able to replace my income before I left healthcare, although it was still scary because obviously healthcare is a guaranteed paycheck and flipping houses is not. And my husband was actually really encouraging me. Like, he's like, do you know if you put the same amount of time and energy into a real estate business as you put into flipping houses and like going to school and learning your master's program. And I was teaching at the time, like building a program for a college. He's like, if you put that much time and energy into real estate, you could really be successful. And that kind of hit me like, wow, I put a lot of time and energy into stuff for other people, but not building my own thing. Yeah. So my husband was really supportive. Now my husband was a real estate agent. So he was also working on commission. So it's not like we had ever had any guaranteed income. So I'm not going to say it wasn't scary, but I didn't do it willy-nilly. Like I was prepared. Like I had money in savings. I was flipping enough houses a year to leave. And even then it was still scary because unexpected things happen. So
And at that time, just you and your husband, no kids at the time, right?
I had my son. Okay. So my son, So oh my gosh, I was 35.
Okay.
So he was,
what is that? 9 years old.
So No, he was actually like, was he 15 maybe or 16? Because I had him when I was 16. So I had him young. So he was older. Yeah. So I think he was in the middle of high school when this happened. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
So so I guess you'd kind of proven the model, right? You'd been doing a little bit on the side. You saw the power of real estate and that you had a skill for it and that it was possible. And that gave you some courage to make that leap away from it. Would you say, what was the other motive? So it sounds like part of the motivating factor was building something for yourself. Was real estate the passion, or was there something else you wanted to do with life that was more the driving factor? Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, totally. I do not like real estate. So I tell people that all the time. Like, people meet me and I think, especially because I'm female, they're like, oh, your life must be like Joanna Gaines. You like flip houses and blah, blah. I'm like, my life is nothing like that. I actually don't like houses. When I had a house, I don't anymore, but when I had a house, when you walked in my front door, there was a pool table in my living room. There were no decorations on the wall. And then I had a second living room downstairs. But I'm not into design or decorating. I can't match paint colors. I can barely dress myself and match my clothing. Like, I'm just not into that stuff. Yeah. So it's never about the real estate. My biggest fear leaving healthcare and going into real estate was that I helped so many people in healthcare that it was so fulfilling. Yeah. My biggest fear was I'm gonna be shallow and be in a business for money and it's not going to be fulfilling. And I found the complete opposite to be true, because when you're flipping houses, people that are selling their houses to you at a discount have like major issues going on in their life that you have to help them through. It's not like a regular person selling their home on the market with an agent. So it took me 3 years to realize, like, okay, this isn't just a money-making side gig to pay off college debt. You're actually helping people. Yeah. And you can be helping more people and be just as fulfilled in real estate as you are in healthcare. But it took me a while to get over that mental hurdle, especially because I was raised to basically like hate rich people. Yeah. So my whole thing was like, I need to be doing something to help people. And now all my businesses kind of revolve around that, like people before profits, and everything I do and everything I want to do. I have big dreams about what I want to do, is all driven by like my need to have enough wealth to be able to change enough lives before I leave this earth.
Love that. Yeah. Because definitely, we spoke before we started here. You helped me out by having a YouTube video out there about owner financing. So you're definitely helping a lot of people out just in a different way. And I think, and the thing I kind of want to focus on today is you're also inspiring a lot of people to be brave enough to follow whatever it is that their dreams are, whether it's through real estate or not, it doesn't really matter, but just creating the life that they want and being brave enough to do so. And I think that's incredibly powerful. So we all thank you for that. Okay. So, and I think I also want to point that out again. It's okay to be in real estate, but not be in love with real estate. I think sometimes there's a paradox out there, or even some people say, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. But I don't know. Can you really? Real estate is cool. It's exciting to me. I understand the power of it. But I don't know if I would do it if I didn't want the passive income and the extra wealth building power there. But what it's enabling me to do is to hopefully focus more on the other things that I'm passionate about. And so maybe break that down a little bit for us. Like how do people be okay with that? Like not doing focusing on real estate.
It's a means to an end. It's a means to an end. And the longer I'm in real estate, the more I see the bigger picture. So like I used to coach a lot and I don't so much anymore. But I helped all these people retire from their jobs and do real estate full time. And these people that retire, like even my business partner now, my flip business, had a full-time job. Now she works from home. She can be home with her kids. She has 2 little kids all summer. So I'm helping her. She's showing her kids, hey, you can work for yourself from home. You don't have to work like for a boss. Yeah. Like I've used private money since 2004. My private lenders all come back to me and say, like, if you wouldn't have educated me on this, you have no idea. You've changed the whole trajectory for my entire family, because I'm growing my retirement account so much faster and I'm growing wealth so much faster. So it's all come full circle to me that it really has nothing to do with houses and loving real estate. For some people it does. And I envy them for that. They love going to Home Depot and Lowe's. You won't catch me dead there. They love flooring and paint. Like, they just are so in love. And I actually envy that. I'm like, that's awesome. Like, I wish I could love it, but I don't. To me, it's a business that helps people that are in need, helps people grow wealth. The only way you are able to help more people in need is if you grow more wealth. You cannot help anybody from a poverty mindset. Nobody can. Yeah. And now people ask me to speak at conferences. So just as an example, I speak at this conference called Elevate in Pennsylvania, and I will speak for these guys till like the end of time, because every conference they raise money for a cause. So everyone that comes to the conference, they do like a silent auction. And so I'll give away like an hour or two of my time, and they bid for my time, and other people, speakers, give away things. And we've built like 2 or 3 orphanages in India. We've donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to a charity that helps fight sex trafficking, like all because people are coming together, giving and receiving in return and helping other people grow wealth so that they can change lives. That's my whole thing. Like, all my emails are like, the tagline at the bottom says, grow wealth, change lives. I don't care what you're doing, but the wealthier you are, the more impact you can have on the world, and the more impact you can have on more people so that they can help more people. Yeah,
I agree with that. And that, I can't remember where I was reading the other day, but it was something to the effect of, one of the biggest services we can do to mankind, to humanity, is to become the best version of ourselves, and to live the life that we want, and to grow personally. Like, sometimes we look at like, well, what can I do to, make a big impact on the world? And we start looking out there at these other opportunities. But I think it has to start in, well, are you doing something that's fulfilling and getting you to a place where you can be impacted? Are you growing, spiritually and mentally, and having are you more able or more aware of why you feel the way you feel and what's happening in your mind? Like, that, I think, is the most important thing we can do for ourselves, to then be a better tool and better able to help people around us. And I think that's a very, very good point. Do you think that being in real estate and having some more freedom of time has allowed you to focus more on your personal and your self-development, whereas in the real estate or in the healthcare world, you may not have had that opportunity?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you talk working a 12-hour day in healthcare, where I was in a position where I was all over the hospital. So you're running to code blues, and you're running here and running there. You're exhausted at the end of the day. You don't have the mental power to think, I'm going to journal. I'm going to think of my next business idea. You're just like, someone just let me go to bed. That's all I want to do. It's exhausting. So I think you definitely, when you're working, because when I was in that working world, I had to make immense sacrifices to start a side business flipping houses and grow that business. That meant sacrificing friends. It meant sacrificing what I say, quote unquote, normal people do, like watch TV. It meant on my breaks at work, I was folding letters, calling sellers back. I couldn't sit there and just like talk to people and, excuse my language, piss the time away. I find that a lot of people are unwilling to make those sacrifices because they're afraid to lose that comfort, which I'm not saying don't be afraid of that. I mean, when I retired from healthcare, I lost my entire circle. I worked with the same group of people. Those were my friends, my family, like that's who I communicated with daily. I definitely, when I left healthcare, went through a year where I was very lost and kind of depressed because I was like, I can't relate to these people anymore, and they can't relate to me, and they don't want to relate to me.
Yeah.
And you have to be okay with being lonely. And I don't care what you believe in, whether it's God or the universe or Buddha or whatever you believe in, totally up to you. But to me, it's like, you're never alone. Like, God is always there with me. So even now in my business, as I grow, I find that I'm going through periods that are lonely because I'm going to that next level, and you're going to leave people behind. And you have to be okay with leaving people behind because you're following your calling, and you know in here that you're meant for something greater.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. How do you know? So I definitely believe in sacrificing, especially early on when you're starting any new journey. The costs are going to be high. But when do you know? Is there a time where you stop sacrificing the ends for the means? Meaning, maybe initially, for example, for me, if I'm starting into real estate, maybe at first I'm up in the morning early, I'm looking at deals. Maybe I'm going to, a meetup instead of my kid's soccer game or whatever, right? Maybe there's some sacrifices that I make. But when do you know when it's okay to start focusing on those things that you want most, and you don't have to sacrifice those things anymore? Because if you're not careful, I think you could go the rest of your life sacrificing in the name of more growth, more deals, more private money, bigger properties, etc. Where's that stopping point, or where do you kind of pump the brakes and maybe take another look at that? Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. And I don't know that I have a perfect answer for it. So this is something I've battled my whole life. And it comes from, I had my son when I was 16. I had to go back to high school and finish high school. I had to go to college, have a son, work a job. So from the time I was 16, it was constantly head down in my lane, work. It's now a constant battle for me for the rest of my life to say, you don't have to be like that anymore. Like you need to find the balance. It really comes from like reading books, and it takes me concentrated effort to pull myself away from building things and growing things and wanting to do things. Yeah. But I don't have the perfect answer to this question because I believe it's always a work in progress. And I was talking to my son about this on the phone today. I was like, balance is bullshit. People want to talk about balance. I don't believe in balance. I believe that you do what you have to do in that moment. And there are moments where I'm like, I am burnout and I need to focus on whatever, my friends, my family, this, that. I've talked about like the 7 F's before. And a lot of people talk about, there's a lot of business articles on it. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's like friends, family, finances, fun, your faith. So what I did about 2 years ago, I had a dry erase board in my office, and I put all the 7 F's on the dry erase board. Anytime I felt unhappy, I would look at the 7 F's and think, where am I not spending enough time? Mm-hmm. I truly believe that you are not spending enough time on one of those 7 F's if you do not feel happy and at peace. And 99% of the time, I could look at that board and be like, my finances are out of order. I don't have a good handle on them. Or when was the last time I saw my friends? Mm-hmm. When was the last time I had some fun? So I feel like for people like me who find it hard to pull themselves away from like the working and building, you need something like that to ground yourself for sure. And that will be something different for everybody, but that's kind of what worked for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's so as we're doing this podcast for the listeners here, April, you're outside of Glacier National Park, right? In your RV.
Yep.
Yep. And in my mind, I would probably go crazy because in my mind, I'd be like, I know that if I was home, I'd be hustling deals. I'd be picking up more properties, whatever, progressing that way. And so it would be hard for me to not just go crazy. Like I love the outdoors and I love, camping and things like that. But it's anytime I do that, it's always like this battle, like, well, I could be doing this, right? So And how do you kind of mitigate that and put that at ease? Maybe you just have to distract yourself enough, but what's your secrets that way?
So I think traveling has helped, because when you're in an area that's so beautiful, it just like completely captivates me, and really helps rest my mind and that anxiousness. I also had to learn to build my businesses to take myself out of that situation. So if I wouldn't have partnered with people and been building my businesses, I wouldn't be able to step away the way that I stepped away. So it took a lot of years and kind of lessons of, okay, I don't have to be there. Now I find I actually have more anxiety back home. I don't have a home now, but if I plant roots again back in Pennsylvania, I have more anxiety when I'm back home because people know I'm there. So when they know I'm there, then they're like, well, are you going to go to settlement? Are you going to do this? I want to meet with you. I want to have lunch with you. And I almost feel like not obligated, but like, oh, I should do this. Like, this is good. Where I finally come to peace with, I don't need to be there. I mean, someone now goes to all my settlements and signs for me. And when I go back home, I don't want to be the face of the business. I don't want to be out there, because my goal now is to build my businesses to sell them and to have someone else run them. And I just kind of want to be behind the scenes, growing more things and more businesses. So, but I can tell you I am not perfect by any means. There are still times. I mean, we were driving through Glacier National Park last night, and we're doing a raise right now for a 166 unit building in Florida. It's like a $30 million building. Funds were due yesterday. I'm like, oh, let's go through Glacier. Well, I have one of my investors who's a doctor calling me last night. I have no cell service. I'm having extreme anxiety because I know like he's supposed to be wiring funds. Is something wrong with his wire? Didn't he get his paperwork filled out? I'm like, oh my gosh, I probably picked the wrong time to drive into Glacier. I still have those moments. And I could not relax. I couldn't relax. And I said to my husband, I just need to go home. I need to get this done. And we have to come back tomorrow. And that might sound so terrible, but that's one of those things about balance where I'm not always raising millions of dollars for a 166 unit apartment building, but right now I am. So like there has to be priority and focus there. So it's something I definitely still struggle with, but I'm getting better.
That's perfect. That's a very helpful, honest answer too. And I think a couple of light bulbs came on in my mind while you were explaining that. I agree with you. Balance is, I don't think it's obtainable. If you want to progress in any one area, I think it takes a temporary laser focused and effort in a direction to move the ball somewhere, right? So I feel like, okay, hey, we're going to raise 100 million or whatever it is. I need to focus on that. We're going to park the RV for 2 or 3 days. We're going to focus on that and get it done. And then for 2 or 3 days, we can do whatever, right? We can balance, right? And so anytime you're starting something new or, trying to get something new off the ground, it's going to take this intense level of focus. So I think that's how we have to look at it. Not like, well, I just spend equal amount of time in all my areas because I don't think anything will move forward. I think that's a very good lesson. And the other thing that I think you mentioned that's profound is that in my mind and probably in others people's minds, when we step away from a business like that to go on a vacation or to tour the national parks, whatever, we in our mind says, well, that means business is going to drop and stop, right? But you've done a good job of building a business where that trajectory is continuing to climb, even though you're not there 7 days a week. And that's important. I think that if we can remember that that's kind of the goal, there'll be less anxiety and less stress when you're taking a minute for yourself and your family. And so I think that's a good thing for people to understand is build a business that can operate without you and that continues to grow. And you just move chess pieces around, right? Basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Be as passive as you can in your business. It's supposed to make you money. It's not supposed to work you to death. I don't want to be tied to anything. I don't want to have to live somewhere in one place. I don't want to be tied to one job or business. I tell people, ask me all the time, how did you get out of your business so that you could go travel? And I'm like, it's easy. I left. Like I used to just snowbird and leave January through March. The first time I did it, it was horrible. Like I had the worst overwhelming anxiety. I was getting calls all the time. that was my fault. That was my fault. But it opened my eyes and showed me everything I had control over in my business that I didn't let go of so someone else could control it. It was all my weak points that I needed to get off my plate and put on someone else's plate so that the next time I went to Snowbird January through March, my phone wasn't ringing off the hook and I wasn't getting called all the time.
Yeah.
So it's a progressive thing, but I tell people, if you want to see where your weaknesses are and what you haven't let go of and how much you're involved in your business, because we tend to think, oh, I'm not that involved. Well, you're there every day and like you're working on it every day. So if you really want to know how involved or not involved you are, leave. Just be like, hey, like I'm going to the other side of the country for 3 months. See ya. And you will see all the holes. All the holes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Good. Gets a good test to do for sure.
Yeah.
So how do you, and I think we've kind of answered this, because one of my fears of taking time or, slowing down in one area to speed up in another is that I might be sacrificing what could be my potential down the road, the slowing down, I guess. But I think, I think if you've designed it right, you're not sacrificing that growth. But I also think it also depends on what you're measuring that attainment, right? If it's just money and buildings and stuff, that might be the wrong thing. But if you might actually sacrifice that. But if you truly value that as well as personal growth and your impact on others and what you're doing to give back, that is going to require some of you. It's going to require you to step back and be free from that a little bit. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense. Total sense. You don't have the space to be growing in all areas of your life if you are all consumed by the day-to-day of your business. You don't have the space. So I joined a mastermind group 2 years ago, and I tell people I've been on the road for 10 months now. So I was home for that mastermind group for 1 year. Then for the past 10 months, I'm still in it, but from the road. I've grown more in the past 2 years, with one of them being not even living where my businesses are, than I have in the past 10. And why is that? It's because I first joined a mastermind group to get one of my businesses off my plate. I had to have someone smarter than me, more creative than me, bigger thinker than me, teach me how to get out of one of my businesses. Once I could get out of that business, I could join this other mastermind group that has helped me grow personally, spiritually. And because I made space for that, that has grown my wealth and financially put me on a completely different path than I was on before. But you have to make space for it first. So as much as you think you're like slowing it down by getting out of the other business, you're actually making space for bigger things.
I love that. Yeah. So for you, what are some of the next things that you're focused on? What do you see? What are your targets now? The bigger things you're chasing? Yeah.
So no one's ever asked me that question. So kudos to you. But I really, honestly, I want to be able to raise $7 million in 24 hours. That's a goal that I've been writing in my journal. And I never used to journal until 6 months ago. So that being on the road has helped me do that. But I want to be able to raise 7 million in 24 hours because I do a lot of capital raising now for larger projects. And so that's just a mental goal I have. And then I want to build a senior affordable housing community.
Okay.
And I don't quite know how that's going to come together yet. If it's going to be renovating that's something that's already existing or building one. But that is a huge goal for me that's super heavy on my heart. It's something I feel like I'm destined to do and I have to do. I will not let go of it until it happens. I do a lot of other ancillary things like my flip business and the wholesale business and buying multifamily, but that is heavier on my heart than anything ever has been in my life. So that's a huge goal for me. I don't really have a number of units goal or anything like that. I honestly feel like right now where I'm at is I just keep growing my wealth so that if all else fails, I can build a senior housing community. And whether it makes me money or not, I don't care. I just want it built. So to me, I'm I'm just going to keep trucking forward and building wealth until I'm wealthy enough that I can say, I'm building this. And does it make financial sense? Nope. Doesn't make me any money, but I don't care.
Yeah. I love that. That's powerful. I appreciate that. So so for somebody, a lot of my listeners are definitely on the beginning side or the newer side to real estate. If somebody's getting started in real estate, what are 2 or 3 like tips you would give them? I mean, you've wholesaled, you've flipped, you've done all the different methods. So I'm not sure that we have to focus on one method, but just generally, like what are 2 or 3 tips that you would give to people? Because if you're like me, you're always talking to people that are wanting to get into it. They're up against a certain obstacle or two. They're afraid of it, whatever. What are some tips that you would give them to get rolling?
Yeah, I feel like if they're new, the reason people don't do it is because they get super overwhelmed. Because you see about like, you have to flip like 30 houses a year and you have to have all these systems. You have to put $100,000 a year into marketing. It's just not true. It took me 3 flips a year to get out of my job. 3 flips a year, that's it. So just start it as a side gig. So I always tell people to start as a little side gig. And how you start it, the fastest way possible is to team up with someone more experienced in your market and ask, what can I do for you that I can start learning and getting cut in on deals? What can I do for you? You have to give to get in life. You always have to give first before you get. So give your heart out and like work your butt off for another investor in your market to learn from them so that you can dip your toe in and start doing deals. When I first found my first deal, I had no money. We took it to an investor that had money. We joint ventured. We made 20 grand. I was like, this is the most amount of money like I've ever made in one check in my whole life. All because I took it to someone else with more experience.
Yeah.
So I really think you don't have to go all in on like a huge expensive course or tons of money in marketing. I just think that's false. So I think people get paralyzed by that. I also think you need to follow what you're passionate about. I have friends that are super passionate about Airbnb because they love that design and style and dealing with customers in the vacation space. Awesome. Chase that. If you don't love it, don't chase it just because other people chase it. I find too many newbies are chasing things because other people are like, I want to flip 30 houses a year. I own 2 flipping companies. When people come to me and they're successful investors and they have rental property and they say to me, what's that like? I've never flipped a house. The first thing I say to them is, I am so jealous of you that you've never had to flip houses. That's just the way I started because I needed to pay off college debt. Yeah. I needed to get out of my job. So that's how I started. Don't go down a path someone else is down if you have no passion for it. Maybe your passion off the bat is to buy a 40-unit apartment building. So chase that with everything you have, but stay focused. People talk to me about Airbnb and all kinds of different things like cutting down trees and selling them on land. And I'm like, I don't have the mental capacity for that right now. You really have to know like where you're going and what you want.
Perfect.
For sure.
I love that. So what habit or characteristic do you see in people that are consistently succeeding versus those that struggle? What's something
they're obsessed?
Say that again.
They're obsessed. People will say negative things about you, and that's how you know you're going to make it. People used to tell me all the time, you love money so much and you are obsessed. I'm like, in my mind, I'm just all about like, how many lives can I change and how can I do that? And through that, it's brought wealth. But everything I do, I become obsessed with it. So when people start saying like, you're obsessed, why are you doing that? Just do this, but you're going to make it. You're going to be great at it. Yeah. That's and the most successful newbies I know have been very detail oriented. Like sometimes people will come to me and they'll go the extra mile. People will come to me and say, I have this great deal. So I'll send them my deal package and say, fill out my deal package for me. I've done that for like probably 50 new investors in my area. Great. You have a great deal you want a JV on, fill out my deal package. I've had 2 probably out of those 50 that actually filled it out. every single line. They filled it out and sent it back. As soon as they sent it back, before I even looked at it, I emailed them back and said, you are going to be massively successful because you are not lazy. You filled out every line of this deal package to a T. Nobody ever does that. Follow through and don't be lazy and be obsessed.
Love it. Yeah. Love it. Yeah. Nobody has ever said obsessed before. So I love that. That's great. So you kind of touched on it a little bit, but what's a common mindset that you see getting in people's way as they're in the early stages of their investing journey?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of things. There's a lot of things that get in people's way, but the most common ones I have seen are what I dealt with and what I see a lot of other people deal with is they have family and friends that are not financially educated, that are anti-wealth, and they will have to leave them behind. I mean, I've had people that have had to leave their spouse behind. Like, you will have to leave people behind. That makes people very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But you will have family and friends that you will have to leave behind. So I think that's a huge roadblock for people. And also sacrifice. I just had this conversation with someone today. Like, if you are with a spouse or a family member that just says like, why can't you just sit down and watch TV with me for like 3 hours at night? Why do you have to answer your phone when that seller calls? Why can't you just like put the phone down for the rest of the weekend? That person does not have the mentality that it takes to stick by you with what you're going to have to put into this business to be successful.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. That's perfect. What book would you recommend for those trying to win and achieve their goals, whether it's in business or real estate? You mentioned you read one that kind of got you started. And I know that's a very fine-tuned question, but what would you say?
Okay. I love books. So I read so many books. I'm just going to tell you the best one I've read this year is Atomic Habits for sure in 2021. Yeah. So Atomic Habits has been the best book this year for me. And I think for anybody looking to grow anything and be successful.
Love it. It's a great book.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So this is a new segment of my podcast. We call it the Success Paradox Breakdown. So because I started to notice that across social media and YouTube and different podcasts, it seemed like there was always these conflicting ideas that I felt like were at extremes. And I'm like, well, how do we make sense of those? For example, some people will say, what's a good one? You've got to work 100 hours a week. And some people say there's more of a, slow down and enjoy the journey type thing. Like, Elon Musk says, if I work 100 hours a week, who's going to win? Right. So, right. And I'm always like, well, okay, well, what's right? Like, how do we interpret that? And so, the one I wanted to propose to you and see what you think is kind of along those same lines. How do we balance, or how do we interpret the ideas of, hustling and grinding and putting in the effort, but also slowing down and enjoying the journey and focusing on that growth? Like, how do you balance those two ideas out?
Yeah. I believe you have to hustle and grind to put in the effort until you build the systems so that you don't have to hustle and grind so hard anymore. That's what I truly believe. Yeah. With every new venture you take on, you're going to have to hustle and grind until you learn it like the back of your hand, can train someone else to do it, and then you don't have to hustle and grind so hard. So there are times where you'll be hustling, grinding, and then not so much. And you'll be able to have more balance in your life. And you have to hang on. You have to hang on during the hustle and grind. That's when you are going to lose the people that won't be there for you in the long run. That is going to be the hardest part of any business. In my flip business, there was a time where I sat down with one of my friends and said, I am quitting. I hate this. This was supposed to give me financial freedom. It's turned into the worst thing I've ever done to myself. Mm-hmm. I hate this business. And she looked at me and was like, you hate it, because you're hustling so hard and you have no help and you need to join like a mastermind group to learn how to get out of it and automate it. And I was like, so I'm basically doing this to myself. I'm torturing myself. But I took her advice. You need friends that are going to be brutally honest with you. Joined a mastermind group, got out of it. Now I'm very little involved in it at all. But I had to go through like that pain to realize what I needed. Don't know if that quite answers your question, but I think it ebbs and flows, I guess, is my point.
Yeah. And I think you've nailed it. What I'm learning with these, because the conflict that came to my mind is that you'd hear one, we'll call him a guru, but you hear one guru say, you've got to do it this way. And another guru say, no, you've got to, you have Grant Cardone saying you got to grind your face off. And you have Gary Vee saying, slow down and enjoy the journey. And I'm like, well, I know they're both right. They both have merit. And I think you nailed it. It depends, right? It depends on where you're at. Tomorrow you may wake up with a new project in mind and it's time to hustle and grind again, right? Or whatever. Yep. And so it cycles, and it depends on where you're going and what stage you are in any certain journey. So both are true statements. And I think that's why people get confused sometimes. Like, well, okay, which one do I do? But it depends. And I think that's what we're learning with these paradoxes.
And they tend to think that people that are very wealthy are completely out of the hustle. And it's not true. I've sat in rooms with people whose net worth is 5 million plus easy. And they all have a different method to how they do things. But the majority of them are like, during an average, say you take a 5-day work week, they're like 3 days, I will work 16 hours a day, nonstop, everything in those 3 days. But 2 days out of those 5, I do not even go into my office. The whole day is spent with my family. The whole day is spent sitting and reading and reflecting and meditating. Nothing for those 2 days. But for 3 days, I grind really hard. These guys, I'm like, I want goals like that. Like, I'm a millionaire, but I want to be like a multi-millionaire. And like, I'm looking at what they're doing and they're telling me that whole balance thing, you set it up how you need to, but it will ebb and flow. There's days where we're on the road. We're like, tomorrow we're going to Glacier National Park all day. I have my entire schedule cleared for tomorrow. Today, I've been in the office all day. People are like, oh, you're traveling the country. I'm like, I still work. There are still days I'm in the office all day. Yeah. But tomorrow I will take the entire day to just go to Glacier National Park.
Yeah. Do you think that you'll ever just completely like be done, be traveling, be done working? Do you see that happening in your life?
No, I feel like that's when you just start sitting there waiting to die. I don't foresee that ever happening. No, I don't. Yeah. So a mentor of mine said, I'm scared to death to retire. I see people retire and then they just waste away. They can't move anymore. They sit on their couch and watch TV. And he's like, you don't retire to nothing. You just retire into the next thing. So I see myself retiring into the next thing. For me, ideally, that would be traveling, doing mission work, educating people so that they can grow wealth, doing things that I can have a greater impact, that I'm like, I don't need to have any income coming in because I'm good now. I can just travel around and do whatever I want to do. But I don't intend to ever stop until I'm in the ground. Ever. Yeah.
I think that's a common misconception or the message is sometimes delivered poorly when people on social media talk about retiring early and financial freedom. I think some people that are in a, grinding it out at a 9 to 5, they're like, oh, well, that sounds good. I want to go sit on a beach and retire early and be financially free. But I think the people that are going to achieve financial freedom and retire early are the same ones that will go forever, just moving from project to project and impact point to impact point, making differences across the world. So I think I wish that was more clear across the social media platforms, that it's not that we're trying to just quit and grab a beer on the beach somewhere, but it's like, we just want to have time and means to do what it is that we're passionate about. even though that might take more grinding and more hours than we've ever imagined. And so I think we've got to be very careful when we talk about that retire early thing, because I don't think that's what anybody truly means.
I don't think so either. I mean, I don't know. I follow Steve Lloyd on Instagram. I don't know if you follow him, but he's pretty awesome and super inspirational, like living the life of his dreams down in Florida. But if you watch what he posts on Instagram, yesterday, the day before, he just posted something was just talking to my student I'm mentoring about raising capital and how he raised whatever, X number of million. And it's like, he has the time, space, and capacity to do that now. He hasn't stopped buying properties here and there. He hasn't but he's living the life of his dream, but he's also doing things like he's still having such an impact on the world and other people by still helping other people grow well. So I completely agree with you. It's not like he's down there just sipping a martini, doing nothing every day, day in and day out. People I don't want to say people like us, like entrepreneurial people that build things and want to continue to grow wealth. That's not our end goal, is to sit on the beach. It's to continue to help people grow wealth, to raise up others, because you see how much it fulfills you and how much happiness you have when you grow mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and financially, and how happy it can make you, that you want everyone else to feel that, so you're not going to stop helping people catch that feeling.
Yeah. You nailed it. I am a big believer. It's why I believe in obtaining wealth and financial freedoms and also self-actualizing, becoming the best version of yourself, because I believe that is truly what can solve a lot of the problems and ills in the world. If everybody, I'm not saying everybody needs to be wealthy, but if everybody had the means so that they weren't worried about the next bill and they could hand $100 to somebody that was in need, all of a sudden the world becomes a better place. And it all starts because we as individuals became the best version of ourselves, and we made the sacrifices to get into a position financially where we could then say, okay, I'm here. Now, what can I do? What can I do for people? And that's why I believe in the mentality and the mindset of money and of becoming the best version of yourself, because I think it's the greatest blessing that we can do for the world.
Agree.
Yeah.
And I feel like it all ties together, when you're growing wealth, you can afford to join a mastermind group that can teach you how to balance yourself and grow spiritually. You can afford to go on a trip that's going to heal you mentally. You can afford to do those things to become the greatest version of yourself. So you totally nailed it. Totally nailed it. Yeah. 100% agree.
So for the listeners out there that there's probably some listeners that think we're absolutely crazy, that, they're stuck in a 9-to-5. They're like, how am I ever going to be able to do what they're talking about and travel, the Western United States in an RV, or do it, whatever it is. Maybe their dream is to go take photography for National Geographic. I don't know, but whatever it is, right? Yeah. I would just say to those listeners, and you can obviously pitch in too, but it's going to take some sacrifice. It's going to take some baby steps, whatever it is. If you've got to start augmenting your income, right? Augmenting your income with wholesale, flipping some deals, whatever you can do to start increasing your income, increase that income, but make sure you stay living on less than your income. That is key, right? Live on less than your income and start putting the excess into investments, right? That make your money grow. You got to get the money, you got to save the money, and then you got to multiply the money. And it will just take time. It'll be harder than you think, and it will take longer than you think, but it will be cooler than you think when you get out of that. So any other advice to maybe somebody that's in that position?
Same. I tell people the same. I mean, I talk about the bucket method on my YouTube channel, where you get a paycheck, and every paycheck, 10% goes into what I call a financial freedom account, and it can only be invested. That's all it's there for, is to invest. You can only invest it in something that grows wealth. You do not touch that, and you always pay yourself that, always, no matter what. Mm-hmm. Then there's other buckets. But I think a huge problem is people live way beyond their means.
way
beyond their means.
Yeah.
You won't find me driving a new car. My RV is not fancy, like all of those things. Because as someone said it, this guy's a multimillionaire at this conference I was at. And he's like, I've never gone to Starbucks. He's like, I didn't go to Starbucks till I was at the point that I could actually buy the Starbucks, like buy a Starbucks franchise. He's like, but my kids go there all the time and spend money on it all the time. So it's that whole like, check what your needs really are, and being really smart with your money. But that financial freedom account is what got me to the point of being a private lender and a passive investor in syndications. And that's the most passive you can be in real estate and still growing wealth. I never would have gotten there if I didn't take that financial freedom account seriously and always put money in that bucket so that I had it. And you touched on it will take longer than you think. Instant gratification is a horrible thing. And we live in a society of instant gratification. That's why social media is so addicting. It's why all that is so addicting. Provides you instant gratification. You really need to learn delayed gratification and patience. This is a game for the long haul, not the short-term quick buck. That's not what it is. For new investors that buy rentals, I tell them, hang on. No matter what happens, just hang on for dear life for 7 to 10 years. And you are going to be able to cash in and do whatever you want to do. But you just need to hang on and have patience.
I love that.
Yeah.
April, this has been amazing. I think we could probably go for another couple hours.
We could.
I feel like we've got a good conversation going. But I appreciate it. Where can people find you? Where can people follow you, learn more about what you're up to?
Yeah, you can follow me on YouTube at April Crossley. You can follow me on Instagram, same thing, April Crossley. And I have a group on Facebook called RVREI. Oh. And we basically talk about all this same stuff. Like this whole podcast today, you should totally join that group because this is the stuff I love. This is probably the best podcast interview I've ever done. Like, thank you so much. It was so awesome and fulfilling. And it's what people need to hear. And when you said like, people might think we're crazy, I'm like, people always think the great ones are crazy. Yeah. Always. So like, if you want to be great, follow the crazy. But in RVREI, that's what we talk about. It's like a little bit of real estate, a little bit of travel, and a lot of just like deep conversations about what does it really take to get there. So
I love that. I love that. And you're right. We did not, and for the listeners, you're right. We did not talk a lot about the tactics of wholesaling or flipping. There's 100 books written on those exact same what you actually have to do. There's a lot written, but I just feel like we have to clear the mind, the pathway or the runway mentally first before any of that's ever going to stick and get you to where you need to be on that success journey. So April, it's been amazing. I'm super blessed or super excited to have had you on the podcast. Hopefully we get to interface and interact down the road too. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Money Maven Project podcast. A true Maven shares knowledge with others, so be sure to share this podcast and leave a review. Thanks so much, and until next time, live life with intention.